All right, everyone. Back long ago, when the Biden administration first brought up the concept of forgiving student loan debt, I pointed out something, and certain other creators, I think, understood the same thing at the time. A lot of people missed on this one. In a lot of the analysis that I saw, people thought that it genuinely was an attempt by the Biden admin to throw a shit ton of money at people that in many cases they don't need it. So, somebody got Pell because they were not well off when they went into college, so they get 20 grand in student loan debt, but now they make 90K a year. Okay, a person making 90K a year, unless their debt is extremely top heavy, probably can make their payments. They are probably capable of swinging a few $100s a month out of their budget. Or you have somebody who didn't get Pell, and their family was relatively well off when they applied. Now they're dirt poor. They're living in Trailerville with a minimum wage job, but they don't get the 20K, they only get 10K. And somebody, meanwhile, who didn't go to college, doesn't get butt-fuck anything. They don't even get a consolation prize from the government. Well, just give $100 to everyone that didn't go to college, or something like that. Whether they're poor or rich, their taxes increase and or they indirectly increase via inflation. So the whole thing was always bullshit. It never made any sense. It was clearly going to be ruled unconstitutional. You could have had a much more liberal incarnation of SCOTUS and probably seen it at least narrowly struck down. We'll put it that way. Some people believed that it was a genuine attempt, though. They said, okay, this is something that the administration wants to do, because effectively it's trying to buy votes from people. That was never the point, or at least that's half the story. It was an attempt to buy votes. But it was not an attempt to actually do the deed of implementing that student loan debt so-called forgiveness. The entire point by the Biden admin was as a throwaway. It was acknowledged years prior. The President of the United States does not control budgetary concerns. If there's nothing allocated to pay for such an arrangement, the President can't do jack shit. This was pointed out by Nancy fucking Pelosi herself during the prior election. So, she came out very early on, before the 2022 elections, and when it was being discussed at first, she said, well, the president can't do this. The president can't unilaterally decide to write off debt, and so, you're barking up the wrong tree. They did this to quell the concerns of the far left, because the far left doesn't understand the Constitution as well as liberals do. The liberals understand it, they just flaunt it for voting purposes. Leftists genuinely don't get it. So Nancy Pelosi came out to shield Biden from that repercussion, from any falls, saying, look, well, we'd love to do this, but Biden can't. All of a sudden, a little bit later on, it's exactly what passes through, or would if it had gone through the legislature. Joe Biden takes executive action because he's a strong leader, and he really cares about the underprivileged, as we've seen from his remarkable economic policies, and pledges that he wants to get that done. First, he blames the Republicans for blocking him. Then he blames SCOTUS for blocking him. Well, this decision is regrettable. We're looking at other avenues. The grift continues, by the way. Joe Biden did not lose for all intents and purposes when it came to the liberals in general didn't lose when it comes to the SCOTUS decision. It was already foretold that would be the decision, and they put forth the policy regardless. Now Joe Biden has pivoted. He's still trying to get through, supposedly, your 10 to 20K for the underprivileged that went to college and again, in some cases, are pushing a six-figure fucking salary. They still get the same non-gradient amount of relief. It's economically, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. Have you looked at the actual plan itself? Try and find another modern example of something that is that confusing. It doesn't even need to be obtuse. It's just the principle behind it makes absolutely no sense. I guess the ACA is the close second, and that's just because it was so long and convoluted. Biden is still pretending, in order to win votes in 2024, that he's interested in this. I'm going to make a prediction for all of the left-wing voters out there, for the 3 or 4 of you that lurk on the channel to hate watch me and dislike everything that I post. You are not going to see student loan debt forgiveness ever. It's not going to happen. The repayment period will start in September. That officially, I don't think there's any further methodology by which Biden can continue kicking that can. A lot of people unwisely during that 2-year loan pause period instead of attempting to pay down their loan, at least some. Okay, maybe they couldn't make their maximum payments, but they're putting $100 a month in or something like that. They're making an attempt. They assumed they were going to get debt forgiveness, so they didn't pay anything. And they've outstretched their budget to compensate, saying, well, I have this extra $250, $300, whatever dollars a month, so I'm going to stop eating ramen and eat Campbell's. Now, I sympathize with people who genuinely, they went to school. In many cases, they did a good job, probably better than me GPA-wise, especially for my first crummy year at UVM, although at Castleton I was at 3.7, so I was doing pretty well there. UVM sort of sapped the initiative out of me. Could have been the drugs, too. Anyway, looking at that, I have sympathy for people that didn't make it. You did exactly what especially core millennials were told you were supposed to do. You went to school. You got your degree, in most cases. Most of them graduate. You've got a 4-year degree, maybe a master's or something. And now you're competing to get a job at Burger King. Double shift. You probably have a second job at this point because of Bidenomics. That's where most of the job growth, so-called, is coming from. That's how unemployment can rise when the number of jobs created was wildly above expectations. It's ma and pa realizing that they just don't have enough money to buy food for the kids, so somebody's got to take out an extra part-time. Then they flip a coin to see who that is and who has to deal with the screaming, hungry child until the first paycheck comes in. How wonderful. That's Bidenomics in a nutshell. Wonderful, isn't it? Clank, clank. But while I feel sorry for these people, in some cases they didn't act wisely. They could have paid down some of their student loan debt. I did. I did a almost $10,000 lump sum last year. I paid into my student loans. Didn't have to. There's no penalty for not paying a goddamn cent. But I did. Why? Well, because I figured, let's lower this principal. There's no student loan repayment right now. I'm capable of swinging it. I don't want to adjust my budget upwards because I tend to be frugal. And so my debt is, I paid a large chunk of it off in one go. Most people, though, didn't. They're just sitting on it. Well, September is coming fairly soon. I hope for the sake of any clankers out there that you did your due diligence. I realize that Bidenomics is bullshit, so in many cases, again, I sympathize. The only thing you can do is do the self-improvement thing. Learn a new skill, learn a new trade, get something else going, get a side hustle, because you might need it. Bidenomics will probably get worse. When the student loan payments begin again, I expect it to do quite a bit of economic damage because of this. Millions of people are unprepared to begin paying back their student loans. And that's because Joe Biden came out and told them unequivocally, you don't have to pay that money off. I'm going to give you that money for free. They were conned. Joe Biden conned millions of people into making arguably the worst economic decision that they might make in their entire lives, thus jeopardizing the economy. When those payments begin again, that's groceries that aren't being bought. That's an enormous amount of money. It's millions of people collectively with hundreds of dollars a month in general that would be making that payment. It's hundreds of millions of dollars a month sucked out of the economy. Well, things are already teetering on the edge. So, and certain job growth will begin again because so many of those people have to get a new side job and they'll go back to eating ramen. They'll be buying less, they'll be traveling less, there'll be less people renting, they'll move back in with their families in many cases. Some of them are pushing 40. I feel sorry for them. And it's Biden's fault. Never forget that. That's about all. Peace out.